An anthropologist proposed a game to children of an African tribe. He put a basket of fruit near a tree and told the children that the first one to reach the fruit would win them all. When he told them to run, they all took each other's hand and ran together, then sat together enjoying the fruit. When asked why they ran like that, they said, Ubuntu. How can one of us be happy if all the others are sad? Ubuntu is a philosophy of African tribes that can be summed up as I am because we are. Working with communities and schools to improve the lives of all children. Parents for Public Schools of Jackson.
Good afternoon. It's a great day here because you are here with us, so we give you kudos and accolades for coming out. We want to say welcome to Lunch Bunch. I'm Gwen Gardner. I'm a retired principal from Walton Elementary School, and I'm now in a new position as principal in residence with Parents for Public Schools of Jackson. And I'm honored and I'm thrilled to be in this position because it affords me the opportunity to still be involved in Jackson Public Schools and in especially the linear feeder pattern. Lunch Bunch meets every first Wednesday of the month at 11:45. We invite you to come and join us and of course bring your friends. Parents for Public Schools of Jackson was founded here in Jackson in 1989. At PPSJ, its mission is to engage communities to advocate for and affect change in public education. We envision quality, equitable public education for all children. PBSJ has adopted the philosophy Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. Before we begin this lunch bunch, I would like to personally say and give a shout out to the Executive Director of Parents for Public Schools of Jackson, Ms. Carolyn Jolivet, and her team. We have Edie Graham, we have Pat Reynolds, and of course me, Gwen Gardner. Okay, with a few announcements before the program begins. Parent-Teacher Conference. JPS Parent-Teacher Conference Day will be held Tuesday, October the 11th at all JPS schools. There will be no school for students. Schools will be open from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock for parents to meet with teachers and discuss students' progress. Job fair. Jackson Public Schools is hosting a job fair for certified and classified positions, including prospective teachers, bus drivers, and cafeteria and maintenance workers. The event is scheduled for 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock Saturday, October the 22nd, 2016, in the school board room. The job fair is a great opportunity for those who wish to teach in the Jackson Public School District. We will have principals and assistant principals to interview candidates at the level at which they are interested in teaching. Of course, we all know you all may have jobs, but I'm sure you know someone who's looking for the opportunity to work in Jackson Public Schools. Our speaker for today is Dr. Jason Sargent. Dr. Sargent is a native of Jackson, Mississippi. He is a husband and father of 5 boys. Dr. Sargent completed his undergraduate studies at Mississippi College and received both his master's and PhD in educational leadership from Jackson State University. Over the past 16 years, Dr. Sargent has served the public school systems of Mississippi in a variety of capacities. At Canton Public Schools, he worked in transportation, was an assistant football coach, and taught 8th grade math. Dr. Sargent was appointed assistant principal at Brinkley Middle School and later became principal of Brown Elementary School and Rowan Middle School. Dr. Sargent currently serves as Chief of Staff for Jackson Public Schools, where every scholar, every day, is ready for life.
I have a few items that I'm going to share with you this afternoon, one of which is some information regarding our legislative audit that took place in the spring of this past school year. What is it? You know, what is a legislative audit? What's the purpose of it? You know, how was JPS selected for this audit? Was it because we were doing something wrong, or what happened? Why do we have to have it? Well, the State Department is required to complete legislative audits at all D and F rated districts over a 3-year period. And this was year 3 of that cycle. And so Jackson Public Schools had not been audited up until that point. So in order to satisfy that requirement, the State Department had to come in and audit our district. And so there's an accreditation manual. It's a big binder that they provide school districts every year that talks about various accountability standards that we have to comply with on a yearly basis in order to make sure that our school districts and our schools are fully accredited. And there are only 3 levels. Either your school or school district is accredited, either on probation or withdrawal. And so our accreditation was removed from accredited to probation. And sometimes people ask, well, how does that happen? You know, what caused the district to be recommended and approved to be placed on probation? Well, if you notice the definition for an accredited school district, it says that you only are accredited when a district complies with 100% of the process standards. Now, there are about 32 standards that school districts have to be in compliance with. And so if they come in and audit your district, and one of those standards or half of those standards or any percentage of those standards that they come in and check, if you're not in full compliance with those standards, then you face the possibility of being reduced to probation. All of the information that we have about the standards is much more in-depth. It is public knowledge. If you are able to navigate the State Department's website and locate the accreditation manual, I mean, anybody is free to go out there and look at it. Once all of these actions take place, then the State Department will come out at various times throughout the school year, and they'll check it to make sure that we're back in compliance, and then they will clear those standards. Then we just make a call to the State Department and say, we're finished with this portion of our plan, and then they come back out to the district. They do a quick visit. They may ask a few questions of a few school board members, and then if everything checks out, then they say, okay, that standard is clear. Well, that process continues all throughout the year until we clear all of the standards that were in violation. Now, when this process started, they cited about 22 standards that we needed to fix out of the 32. They gave us about 30 days to look over their findings and then provide any additional information that they may have overlooked, and we could appeal to them to have some other standards cleared. So when that process was done, we were able to clear another 2.5 standards. And so we were able to reduce it from our response from 22 standards to 19. So we're currently working on 19 standards that we need to clear in order to bring the district back to a full accredited status. And so once we finished providing them with our response, after the response, the State Department gives us 60 days to come up with what they call a corrective action plan, or they call it a CAP. And so we're getting close to our 60-day window. We have to have our action plan turned in by October the 20th. And so we will be submitting that to the State Department on time. But what Dr. Gray shared with our school board last night is that out of all of the standards that we need to correct and out of all the actions that we've listed that we need to do, we already about 46% finished with those items that we need to fix. And we haven't even turned in our plan. And so we're making a lot of progress with satisfying these requirements and bringing our district accreditation back to accredited. What effect does this have on our students? Well, under probation, there is no impact on our students. A probation is kind of like a penalty in football. It's a flag on the play. It's just a warning and a notification to say, look, you got some violations that you need to fix. But there are no penalties on our students. So the probation is just letting the State Department know that we're not 100% with all of these standards, but we can't fix them. It's not in such a way that we can't get them fixed. And so our students will still graduate from an accredited high school, our seniors that are currently in 12th grade this year. Our athletics won't be affected. Students can still go to playoffs and that kind of thing. So I think when the report first came out, a lot of our community thought this was going to have a negative impact on our children, and it does not. Some may have thought it had something to do with academics. All right, the process standards they have no impact on student achievement. These are compliance pieces. For example, one of our standards deals with cumulative folders. And so all of our students in the state of Mississippi have to have a cumulative folder. And so in that cum folder, it contains all of that child's personal information, birth certificate, immunization records, and test scores, just everything that pertains to their matriculation through public schools. So when they transfer to other schools in the state of Mississippi, that cum folder has to follow them. And so the state has certain requirements that cum folder has to meet. And so when they came in and checked all of our cum folders for our 26,000+ students, they found that some kids' cum folders were either missing some grades from maybe kindergarten, or maybe their address wasn't properly recorded. There's just some human error issues that they found with our cumulative records. And so again, if you're not in 100% compliance with what they're looking for, if anything is out of place, then you fail that standard. So it's either all or none. There's no in between. It's either you have it all in place or you don't. And so these are the kinds of things that they look for when they come out and do our audit. The biggest three standards that we're having to focus on the most are those that deal with our facilities, that deal with safety, and deal with transportation. And so when they came into our schools, they found a lot of maintenance needs of our buildings. A lot of our buildings are old and certainly need some upgrades, and our facilities department has been working aggressively to get those things fixed. The safety issues that they found maybe dealt with metal detectors being set up in the appropriate places, and making sure that they're being utilized, making sure that we had the appropriate number ones, making sure that we had the fire extinguishers in all their appropriate places and they were not expired. So with our transportation, they checked our buses. If a tail light was out, then that bus failed the check, if the stop arm wasn't working. And so these are the kind of compliance things that they checked for when they came and looked at these standards. And so our transportation department, we've ordered some new buses for them. They're also in the process of making some maintenance and upgrades to the fleet that we currently have. We're in the process of equipping those buses with JPS so that we can do a better job of getting our students to and from school in a timely manner. Our safety department, they've increased safety personnel at our secondary schools. They have school resource officers now present in addition to the safety officers that were already there. We make sure that all of our plans have been updated, our school crisis plans, our emergency plans. We make sure that all of our tornado drills and fire drills are done when they're supposed to be done. So these are the kinds of things that this audit came to look for. And so those are the kinds of things that we're making sure that we correct. And so once we get them corrected, we also put systems in place to make sure that they stay corrected. The other question that we often get about the audit is, are you just fixing those schools that were part of the audit, or does all schools get fixed? Well, we fixed them all. So even though the State Department came in and they observed about 22 of our schools, this same corrective action is being done to all of our schools. And so if we found facilities issues at 22 schools, we also checked the other schools that were not audited to see if they have the same facility needs. And then if they do, then we make the appropriate plans to address those issues at those schools as well. So that's just an overview and just kind of an update of where we are with our legislative audit and what we're doing to bring our district back in full compliance with our audit. The second piece of information that I want to talk to you all about is the release of our 2015-2016 test scores. You've probably heard, I've seen a lot of reports about our new test. They call it the MAP, the Mississippi Assessment Program. Our students took that series of tests for the first time this past spring. We started testing our kids in April, and they tested all the way through maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks of May. And so this was a new assessment for our students that they had to take. And so the year prior to that, students had to take PARC. You all remember when our state was a part of the PARC assessment test. And so our students had to take a different test this past year than they took the year before. And so for actually 3 years in a row, our kids have taken 3 different assessments that was designed by 3 different companies. Back before we took PARC, our kids took the MCT2, which is probably the one we're all most familiar with because we took that for over maybe 6 or 7 year period. And the MCT2 test tested our kids' knowledge and what they knew from the Mississippi framework. The Mississippi framework was the curriculum that our teachers had to teach. The MCT2 was a test that they took to see how much of that they had learned. And so time had passed when when the state decided to do PARC, they made a switch to Common Core. And the purpose of this Common Core curriculum was for us to have a national curriculum that all states would use. So it didn't matter if your child was in Georgia, if they were in California or in Mississippi, all of our kids would be learning the same and being taught the same standards. And the purpose of the PARC was the federal government's attempt to also have a consistent assessment across the country. Well, of course, for political reasons, that didn't quite work out. The majority of the states implemented the Common Core curriculum, but very few states participated in the PARC assessment. But Mississippi was one of those states that participated in the PARC assessment. So our students that year not only took a new test, but they were being taught a new curriculum. So any year that happens, the State Department is always going to set a new cut score. Cut scores are important because the cut scores help determine the accountability letter or label for a school district. Anytime the accountability model changes, anytime the test changes, especially the test, there's always going to be a change of cut score. The cut score is what determines what's an A, what's a B, what's a C or a D. And so for our tests, students have to perform at a certain level in order for districts to be A, B, C, or D. Well, over the past 4 years, that standard has changed every year. Our administrative team, we were looking at our data over the last 4 or 5 years, and what we noticed is that our students' performance has not changed. There's been very little movement. Over the years, we had a little decline in student achievement, and then some years we had a little increase. But it wasn't significant enough to say that that was a dramatic change. So when we looked at all of those numbers and we looked at the labels that we've been given over the last 4 years, even though our kids have taken a different test and have been taught a different set of standards over the last 4 or 5 years, their achievement has basically stayed the same. But what has changed is the cut score. Well, so what has changed is the measuring stick. So the measuring stick that measures the A, B, C, or D is what looks different. That's what have all the districts across the state of Mississippi so concerned and so nervous, because they're looking at their results, and their results look similar to the way they looked last year. But because the cut scores or the measuring stick is different, you have some school districts that were traditionally an A school, a school district that could possibly be a B or a C, because they've increased the cut score in order to be an A school. You have some districts who have consistently performed at the B level for some years that can now drop to C and D districts. And right now, none of us know what that's going to look like because the state hadn't released it. I think they're scheduled to give us some preliminary results on October 13th. And then I think they're going to release them to the public later that month. But it's important for our community to know that regardless what happens with Jackson, whether we move to a C, whether we stay a D, or whether we drop to an F, because all 3 of those scenarios are possible. Because right now we don't know what the cut score would be set at. What we're trying to do and what other districts are trying to do across the state is make sure that when our community reads the paper and the headlines say that Jackson is a D or Jackson is an F, it's important for you all to know that our student performance has not changed. Our students are not performing any better, any worse than they have over the last 3 years. What has changed is what determines that letter grade. When you look at how our kids are performing individually on the test, they're still performing at the same level even though they've taken a different test over the last 4 or 5 years. And so we're just waiting to see what this letter grade is going to look like. At the very least, we hope everybody wants to move a letter grade up. We hope we maintain, and we certainly hope that we don't go backwards. But we're preparing for all three scenarios, and we're working this year to make sure that whatever comes out from our 15-16 test results, that 16-17 is going to look better. The last thing that I was asked to share with you was a new initiative that our superintendent started this year. Now, it was sort of a response to a lot of the shifts that have been taking place with the new curriculum and the new test in the state of Mississippi. Dr. Gray identified 7 schools this year that he calls his schools of promise. We have Clausell Elementary, Isabel Elementary, and Wilkins Elementary. In the middle schools, there is Blackburn and Whitten, and then in the high schools is Jim Hill and Wingfield. Dr. Gray identified these schools of promise because he just felt like they were on the verge of really making some significant turnaround. When he looked back at the data over the last 4 or 5 years, those 7 schools really stuck out to him. He brought the administrative team together. He said, I really would like to take these 7 schools and try a few strategies that have worked across the country, and I want to see if we can make them work in Jackson. If we can make them work in these 7 schools, then maybe we can push them out and try to make them work in some other schools. And so that's what the Schools of Promise initiative is about. For example, we do a signing bonus for teachers at these schools. So any teacher that comes in, and new teacher that decides that they want to teach at one of these schools, they get a $5,000 signing bonus. Some of you may or may not know, our state right now is currently on a teacher shortage. We're very short. We just do not have a lot of our young adults going into the teaching profession. Now, Mr. Walters, our deputy superintendent here, of course, is over personnel, and they even looked at the number of graduates last year that graduated from the local colleges in the teacher education program. 108 students graduated fully certified in the state of Mississippi. 108. Okay, that's the size of one of our smallest elementary schools. So when you look at over the state of Mississippi, and our local colleges and universities are only putting out 108 students that are eligible to go in and start teaching, and you have all these school districts in the state of Mississippi fighting for them. That's why we have vacancies. We have a very aggressive teacher recruitment plan. We host multiple job fairs all across the school year. The problem is there's nobody out there to fill the positions. And so, because in order for us to put a teacher in a classroom, they have to be fully certified, which means that they have to have a degree in elementary, secondary education, and they have to pass 2 tests. One called the Praxis 1 and the other called the Praxis 2. Once they have passing scores on that test, then the state of Mississippi gives you a teaching license. If they don't have that teaching license, we can't put them in the classroom. The only thing they can do is sub. And so that's why Dr. Gray wanted to try this signing bonus, to see if we could attract teachers from other states even, to try to come in and teach at some of these schools. Those schools also do a merit pay system for those teachers that are there to try to retain the ones that are there, because other surrounding states in some cases can offer to pay more than in the state of Mississippi. And so we try to do a merit pay system for student achievement. So if the kids perform better, then there are some other bonuses that teachers could get. So this is our first year doing it. And so we're looking at the data to see how much of a difference that's truly making. If we need to make any adjustments to it for the upcoming school year. We've had some success with our signing bonus, but the signing bonus doesn't help much if there's nobody out there to take advantage of it. We're even working with Jackson State, of course, and with their teacher education program, and trying to do what we can to help them attract more students into those teacher education programs, and making sure that once those kids get in those programs, they can actually pass the test. Because one of the changes that they made, even after I came through when I came through as a teacher, as long as you passed your course requirements, you could graduate with your degree, and then it was on you to pass the praxis exam. Well, they made changes a couple of years after I left, and they said that now in order for you to graduate, you got to pass the exam first. So a lot of our students that are coming through the universities in the teacher education program, they get stuck like their sophomore, junior year, because they can't pass the praxis 1 or 2. And these colleges and universities won't allow you to graduate without passing it because it affects their accreditation. And so, and we even meeting with the State Department with their teacher recruitment center to see what kind of support that they could give us in trying to hire some certified teachers. And so, but that's what the Schools of Promise initiative is about. Dr. Gray took those 7 schools under his wing, and he pulled me in and the deputy superintendent to help monitor those 7 schools to make sure that these initiatives are moving like they should, so that we can make a true determination whether or not it's making a difference, so that we can decide whether or not to roll them out to other schools within our district. First question says, how is JPS cited if they were not provided the adequate funding for this particular issue? The state is required by the state legislature to do the legislative audit. That's why they call it a legislative audit. And it's funny that you mentioned funding, because the legislature set aside funding to fund the legislative audit. So it would have been helpful if they would have taken that same funding and given it to school to meet some of the requirements that they were looking for. Regardless of the funding that they give, whether or not that they fully fund education, which they have not done for years, they still require us to meet those standards. And so when we're out speaking to our community, we encourage our local politicians, and we encourage all of our advocates and organizations like Parent for Public Schools to speak on the behalf of Jackson Public Schools and all public schools in the state of Mississippi, because our state has a responsibility to fully fund education. And when you don't fully fund education, these are the kinds of things that will happen. Next question was about merit pay. Has any planning begun for how teachers will be selected for merit pay? Yes, it's based on student achievement. There's a whole packet that we gave teachers at the beginning of the school years that outline how they can qualify for the merit pay. And we did not just keep it on student achievement. It's the bulk of it, but they also can receive some incentives for good attendance, teacher attendance, as well as good student attendance. There's a variety of ways that they can earn money toward merit pay. Next question, do we have a plan for our student behaviors in the classroom? Do our principals have the authority to handle it? Absolutely. Our principals have the full authority to issue discipline to our students according to our code of conduct. Our school board just recently approved our 16-17 code of conduct. Our code of conduct was being updated, and we did not want to release it this year until we knew that it was where it needed to be. And so for those of you that are parents in the room, grandparents, aunts and uncles, you'll be receiving an updated code of conduct very soon. We also offer ongoing professional development for our teachers in the area of classroom management. A lot of our teachers that are coming into the profession did not go the traditional route. Many of our teachers took the alternate route, which means that they earned a biology degree. They didn't have any intentions on teaching, but decided that they didn't want to maybe pursue something in the medical field, and decided, well, you know what, I like to teach. So they took the alternate route program. Well, when they take the alternate route program, they only receive about, I think it's a 4-week course in classroom management. You can't learn classroom management in 4 weeks. Okay, so when many of our teachers come into the school districts, we have to do additional training and development for our teachers on how to effectively manage a classroom. Number 2, why have so many tests been used? Because the standards changed. You know, every president is going to bring their educational plan. And so with that national curriculum, you can test those standards with a state level test, because it would not test those same standards. So anytime you bring in a new curriculum, you got to bring in a new test. They go hand in hand. When the states decided that they wanted to go back to having state level tests, they decided to go back and have a state level curriculum. Well, again, anytime the curriculum changes, the test has to change. So once the state made the decision to go back to a state level curriculum, and truly what they did, they just took the Common Core standards and they adopted them and made them the Mississippi College and Career Ready standards, but they did want to go with another test. They were not satisfied with the reliability and the validity of PARCC. But anytime you change a curriculum, you're going to always end up changing the test. But it seems like now that we're going to have some consistency for quite some time, so it looks like our children will have the opportunity to have access to the same curriculum and actually take the same test for the next couple of years. The last question on this card, is there a maintenance plan for aging facilities that is honored in a timely way. Yes. Mr. Davis is our executive director for facilities. Mr. Davis actually has a 3-year plan. It's a cycle plan, as well as our transportation department. The issue wasn't the plan. The issue goes back to the question that was asked earlier about funding. Every year, our plan is to purchase school buses. Every year, our plan is to fix certain parts of our schools, because once you get them on a cycle, then you don't ever have to catch up. It's kind of like my mom and dad used to tell me with cleaning the house. It's easier to keep up than it is to catch up. Because of the funding, we just hadn't been able to purchase the buses on an annual basis like we would prefer. We just had to reroute the money in the best appropriate places. We have a plan in place. We really try to adhere to that plan, but the more you can speak out to our state legislatures about fully funding education, the better job we can do to make sure our kids have good buses to ride on and quality facilities to learn in, because we want the same thing you want. That's why Dr. Gray revised our mission and vision statement for this year, to ensure that all our scholars learn in clean and safe environments. So that's one thing that our community always asks, what is it we can do to help? Vote. Another question, will the number of vacancies, particularly bus drivers, affect the cap? It could. Process Standard 2 deals with personnel, and which is why we're meeting with the State Department's Teacher Recruitment Office on tomorrow, because we want to make sure that they recognize the efforts that we've put forth to try to recruit teachers. And we want to make sure that they understand that they have a responsibility in helping us recruit teachers too. And so if they have any teachers out there that's looking for jobs, then we're ready today to interview them and put them in a classroom. Also, the recruitment of bus drivers. One of the reasons why we're having transportation issues is not just because of our school buses, but because we don't have enough drivers. It's like we don't have enough teachers. It's just not a lot of folks out there with the proper license and the proper endorsement. And so if any of you all know anybody out there looking for a job and want to drive a school bus, send them our way.
And thank you, audience, for being such an engaged audience. Our next Lunch Bunch is next month, November 2nd, 2016. Hope to see you here, same time, same place. Until then, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and our website for updates on the upcoming news out of our schools and communities. Remember, we're working together to improve the lives of all children. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.